Now I'm going to, here we go. All right, we are recording. This is like, I think the 12th session here. So we're moving right along.
Rolling right along.
Moving right along. We got 44 pages done in 12 sessions.
Just about halfway through, it looks like, barely.
Yeah. Well, we just entered the second of 3 sections of the book, but I think the first section may have been a little bit longer, but we shall see. Anyway, we're on page 45 now. You can go to page 45. And any new business? Anyone wanted to bring anything up that you've been pondering over the week? Or shall we just dive in? Okay, we're diving. Now, this, unfortunately for Frank, because he so rarely gets to read more than about a sentence or two because I'm always interrupting him. This was one of those chances for him to read like 3 pages all in a row. So you get to listen to me do it. So our wordy world doesn't require a lot of comment, but just listen to the way he characterizes. And remember, this is 41 years ago, right? Over the last few decades, we have been inundated by a torrent of words. Wherever we go, we're surrounded by words. Words softly whispered, loudly proclaimed, or angrily screamed. Words spoken, recited, or sung. Words on records, in books, on walls, or in the sky. Words in many sounds, many colors, or many forms. Words to be heard, read, seen, or glanced at. Words which flicker on and off, move slowly, dance, jump, or wiggle. Words, words, words. They form the floor, the walls, and the ceiling of our existence. He's writing this from 1981. How much more so now, huh? The internet was not even a glimmer in the eye in 1981, was it? Or even microcomputers. We didn't have Macs, we didn't have PCs in 1981. I think we were still using cassette tapes in 1981. And yet look at what he writes. It has not always been this way. There was a time not too long ago without radios and televisions, stop signs, yield signs, merge signs, bumper stickers, and the ever-present announcements indicating price increases or special sales. There was a time without the advertisements, which now cover whole cities with words. Recently, I was driving through Los Angeles, and suddenly I had the strange sensation of driving through a huge dictionary. Wherever I looked, there were words trying to take my eyes off the road. They said, use me, take me, buy me, drink me, smell me, touch me, kiss me, sleep with me. In such a world, who can maintain respect for words? All this is to suggest that words, my own included, have lost their creative power. Their limitless multiplication has made us lose confidence in words and caused us to think more often than not, they're just words. Teachers speak to students for 6, 12, 18, and sometimes 24 years. But the students often emerge from the experience with the feeling they were just words. Preachers preach their sermons week after week and year after year, but their parishioners remain the same and often think they are just words. I remember going to a retreat at Sarah Retreat in Malibu, and it was a type of place, a Catholic retreat center, right? And this was Henri Nouwen, the guy who stuck his hand in my face. He is leading the retreat, and it was the type of thing where the same parish would book the same weekend every single year, right? And these crusty old guys were coming. It was a men's retreat, and they were coming year after year. And he was asking them questions, and they were answering like right out of the Baltimore Catechism. And he said, you know what? Finally, this is Henri Nouwen talking to the whole group. He said, you know what? If you guys are going to keep coming here year after year and never change, stay home. Never heard that before in a retreat. And I'm sure he got a lot of letters to the Chancery office after that. But that was his problem, you know, year after year, saying these things, working with them, and there was no change. So preachers preach their sermons week after week and year after year, but their parishioners remain the same and often think they are just words. Politicians, businessmen, ayatollahs, and popes give speeches and make statements in season and out of season. But those who listen say they are just words, just another distraction. The result of this is that the main function of the word, which is communication, is no longer realized. The word no longer communicates, no longer fosters communication, no longer creates community, and therefore no longer gives life. The word no longer offers trustworthy ground on which people can meet each other and build society. Do I exaggerate? Let us focus for a moment on theological education. What else is the goal of theological education than to bring us closer to the Lord our God, so that we may be more faithful to the great commandment to love him with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our mind, and our neighbor as ourselves. Seminaries and divinity schools must lead theology students into an ever-growing communion with God, with each other, and with their fellow human beings. Theological education is meant to form our whole person toward an ever-increasing conformity with the mind of Christ, so that our way of praying and our way of believing will be one. But is this what takes place? Often it seems that we who study or teach theology find ourselves entangled in such a complex network of discussions, debates, and arguments about God and God issues that a simple conversation with God or a simple presence to God has become practically impossible. Our heightened verbal ability, which enables us to make many distinctions, has sometimes become a poor substitute for a single-minded commitment to the Word who is life. If there is a crisis in theological education, it is first and foremost a crisis of the Word. This is not to say that critical intellectual work and the subtle distinctions it requires have no place in theological training. But when our words are no longer a reflection of the divine Word in and through whom the world has been created and redeemed, they lose their grounding and become as seductive and misleading as the words used to sell Geritol. Y'all remember what Geritol was? Okay. Yeah, that's not going to work too well with the younger generations. But what? There was a time when the oblivious milieu for theological education, there was a time when the obvious, a little bit different there, obvious milieu for theological education was the monastery. There, words were born out of silence and could lead one deeper into silence. Although monasteries are no longer the most common places of theological education, silence remains as indispensable today as it was in the past. The Word of God is born out of the eternal silence of God, and it is to this Word out of silence that we want to be witnesses. So, 41 years ago, he writes those 3 pages. How much more today is that true? I mean, it just seems that we are completely deluged. You go and just pump your gasoline, and they've got a video screen there now that is selling you something. I mean, everywhere you go into elevators, have you seen elevators? They've got screens. Wherever there is a captive audience for even 30 seconds, someone is going to put a screen up and is going to try to sell something to you, or give you news, or give you this, or give you that. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. You watch some of the kind of dystopian, I guess is the word, dystopian science fiction movies depicting the city of the future. And it's even more so, isn't it? Whole buildings are now have projections on them and advertisements and whatnot. And so
Like 42nd Street.
42nd, I didn't see that movie, but was that?
Well, no, but in New York.
In New York.
If you're standing in Manhattan on 42nd Street, man, it is that. Buildings are alive, aren't they, William?
Yes.
I mean, just
well,
like,
one of the new things I'm observing is in the subways, they have these screens. They're moving little television screens that are, I like it actually. It's, I think it's easier to maintain and they keep it cleaner than just putting up the pasted posters they used to have.
Oh, instead of the posters that used to be there, they're now actual screens.
Yeah, and you can have like a commercial, like a series of different commercials coming through rather than having one static thing. And I'm all about it. I say, bring on the words.
Pay no attention to that man from Brooklyn. He's going in the wrong direction. I tell you. That's okay. He's Satan's advocate. We have already established that. But it is really kind of breathtaking. And I think that's the main thing, is to just sit back and watch where the culture is going, watch where the technology is going, what is becoming possible, and the absolute constant deluge of information that is hitting our senses, pretty much constantly from our entire waking days.
I also find it interesting that a lot of our applications and things on your phone and whatnot, whatever you're turning on, you're now asked to pay if you don't want advertisements. I mean, it's like, what kind of a world are we into now where we actually have to pay to not be advertised to? It kind of aggravates me a little bit. It's like, I have to pay to not be advertised to? How rude.
But then who are you paying?
You're paying whoever it is, the application or whatever, to say, if you want these ads turned off, here's a small fee if you want to pay to have the ads turned off.
They certainly need more money.
Yeah. Where's the world come to?
Yeah. So it's crazy. And so just to be aware of it and be aware of how much we are being inundated. I'm hearing more and more, and of course I'm experiencing it myself. Of course, at this age, maybe it's going to happen anyway, but I'm finding that a lot of things kind of flow in and right back out again. My brain is it's like it's filled up, and in order for something new to enter, something else has to go. It's kind of at that point now, and it's like, okay, well, how much of that is just early onset dementia, and how much of that is actual just information overload? You just can't hold anymore. And I'm talking to so many people, of course, they're stressed, they're anxious, they're sucked into the 24/7 news cycle whole, and they're constantly processing the news, stuff that in former generations we just didn't even know about. It was regional news. Now everybody knows everything, and of course the more heinous and grisly the better. And they're having trouble sleeping at night because the stuff is continuing to spin. It's something to really think about in terms of how much it's affecting us unconsciously, subconsciously. How much of it is subliminal that is getting in there, and what is it doing to our psyche? What's it doing to our sense of meaning, purpose, contentment, all of those sorts of things. In music, you have to play the rests with every much intention as you play the notes. We think of music as being sound, but music is also silence. And the note is only intelligible by the silence before and after it. It has to come out of silence and it has to go into silence. There has to be a beginning and the end. And it's the silence that actually frames the sound and makes it something that we can actually, recognize as a note. We don't tend to think of our words that way, but it's the same thing. They are framed in silence. They need to come out of silence and they need to return to silence. And if we don't treat them that way, I was talking to a young man, he's in our ministry school. And so we talk once a week, and he's going through material and we talk about it. But he's interesting, because he's in his mid-30s, and yet when I say something to him, there will just be silence on the other side for sometimes a good 5 or 6 seconds. And at first, I wasn't used to his kind of cadence and the way that he communicates. I realize now he's actually processing. He's thinking about what was said, and he's not afraid to just leave silence. And so I'm learning to play the rests with him. I'm learning to play the silence with him. I just let it go, and then when he's ready to speak, he speaks. But it's a slower kind of give and take. But I love it. In fact, I actually complimented him on it today. I said, and I don't know if you realize this, but I love that you just take the time to think about what was just said before you actually speak. It would be so much better, I think, for all of us if we would do that more. Problem is, it's like when you get 2 car lengths left space on the freeway, someone is going to go right in there and take that space, right? And that's the problem. If we leave space, and someone's going to just jump right in there and take it, like the space in front of your car on the freeway. And so it's so hard for us to leave space anymore, because not everybody, in fact, very few people are going to value or honor the silence. So someone's going to jump in there and think that there's something wrong. You know, it's so uncomfortable to have that 2 seconds of silence. So someone's going to have to jump in and make a joke. If we as a people can start getting more comfortable with silence, I think it would make a big difference in how we just experience life. Any other thoughts along those lines?
When after Brady has finished a day of, sometimes some pretty, tough, or not tough clients, but, just difficult situations with people, he has to go, even when it's hot, very hot here, turn the fan on and out in the back porch, and he needs silence. He needs to sit alone and just, maybe with a little shot of wine, and he has to do that every day, and just to be quiet, be away. I honor that always, and it's he needs that. Maybe William, I don't know if you need that kind of just like, getting away from it all, just be quiet, sit out there, watch the butterflies, whatever. But he really needs that, and I need it too. I really need it too. I do that a lot if I'm doing errands. We used to have Sirius, and we play 60s songs and early 70s all the time. And I do love that. I love it. I love it. There's usually some song going through my head, even when I wake up out of a dead sleep in the morning. There's a song playing in my head. It can be from the 60s or a hymn, which is great. But anyway, I need that alone time and the silence too a lot. Now, things are very quiet around here. All you can hear is him talking to people. So, we definitely need the silence.
That's great. I don't know if William does. He likes monitors in the subway, so.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't have an unwind routine built in like you were just describing. But I do love my alone time, but I've never struggled with being with people. So I think I'm an introvert, but I like being social. But I really like being alone.
And do you maintain silence when you're alone, William? Or do you fill it with something?
I am really trying to build a meditation routine. I sat today for maybe 20 minutes, but it is sporadic, maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks when I guilt myself into doing it. But yeah, it hasn't become a set routine as yet, and I'm working.
But I'm even beyond just meditating. Just if you're alone, do you maintain silence, or do you turn on radio or TV or have something going, music?
I like the silence. Even when I'm driving, I just turn everything off and just try to be totally present. Like if I'm doing my housework and cleaning up and so on, I just do that in silence. I like the idea of, singing a song to myself, like Beth was talking about, like especially like a hymn of some sort. Even like I might even just have the chorus in my head because I don't know the words, and I just keep kind of repeating that and just trying to stay present to that while I'm doing my housework or whatever that needs to look like. So I can stay in that space for a longer time if I do like a moving meditation, like a cleaning the house meditation. But I don't get to, I think I do incorporate a lot of silence. It's not something I do with a lot of effort anymore, I suppose. And I don't know if that's good or bad. Because sometimes I might just be zoning out. And that's the thing with my personality type. I can look like I am in this contemplative place, but I'm just spaced out, and the two might look very similar, and they actually feel very similar. Like when I'm actually in a contemplative place versus I am not thinking of anything. My mind is just blank. And I think, and maybe you can clarify this, Dave, but there's got to be some kind of thinking. There's got to be more of an active process in the contemplative space. And I think many of my moments of what I would like to describe as not thinking is not very active. It's more of a passive state of being. I don't know if I'm being overly critical of myself, but it kind of feels.
No, well, there is a difference between, let's say, contemplative prayer or contemplative practice and daydreaming or just being completely spaced out in the kind of road hypnosis way, where you've missed 3 exits and you don't, it's not that kind of trance-like state. It's not hypnotic. In an ideal contemplative state, you would still be, in fact, even more hyper aware of the circumstance of the environment around you. You're aware of sounds, you're aware of sensations, you're aware of all these things, and your mind has calmed down, but it's still aware. But the huge difference is you're not thinking about that awareness. You're aware of things, but you're not thinking about them. You're not naming them in your head. The dialogue stops and you're just there, present to and aware of. And that's a big difference. But you're not in a trance either. It's like, you would be able to remember and recall things maybe that happened while you're in contemplative prayer, but you wouldn't have been thinking about them. You'd just been present to them. I don't know if that helps. It's a little bit of a fine distinction, but it's huge as you experience it. Big difference. But that's good that you're maintaining silence in other periods and times of your life, because I think that's what we need to just be aware enough to realize we need a balance. So we can't avoid the world. We're going to be immersed in all of the noise and the craziness, but there are things that are voluntary that we can turn off. A lot of people just have the television going as background all day long, or a radio or music or something. And there's nothing wrong with listening to music, of course, or watching the news, but is there enough balance? So we're getting some balance. And that would be the thing, to be aware of where you are and if there's a balance in your life where you can have more room for introspection. And even if you do, like William said, which is perfect, a cleaning meditation, you're pushing the vacuum cleaner around, that's noisy, but you could still go into that contemplative place where you're doing it, you're feeling it. It's like Thich Nhat Hanh was always saying, when you wash the dishes, really wash the dishes, feel the viscosity, feel the things, make it a sensory experience. Don't do it so that you can do the next thing. It's not a task to be completed so you can do the next thing. It is the only experience that you're having at the moment. Can you do it that way? And then you can introduce, these contemplative elements even to everything that you do. Like Brother Lawrence, I feel God's presence when I turn the cake that's frying in the pan. It's like that. So we can bring it in, we can integrate it, but I think we are so out of balance, most of us, just because of where the culture has gone, that we do need to then consciously and intentionally recreate the balance, pull the pendulum back towards center. And you may find it's harder to do than you thought.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing is that here we are, we're reading this book, we're reading a lot of things. We're trying to work on our spiritual formation, and that usually is meant to involve a lot of listening to speakers, to preachers, to pastors, podcasts, reading books, reading articles and all these things. There comes a time when you just need to turn that off too. There comes a time when you just have really enough information, enough data. And what needs to happen now is you need to actually put that in practice and shut it off. This hit me so hard in 1993, and I wrote a journal entry about it. And it was interesting because I was feeling this buildup. And then one morning I was reading the Imitation of Christ. Are you familiar, even know that title? It's 14th, 15th century spiritual classic by Thomas à Kempis. And I hit the this one little part. Let me go ahead and put it up. Okay, are you seeing that?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so
Yes.
Tuesday, 9/21/93. Wow, that was just almost exactly to the day, right? 9 p.m.
Hey, Dave, can you make that any bigger? Can I
I-
zoom in on that or?
Yeah, let me, let's see. How's that? Does that help at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bigger.
It's good.
Okay, so this is Thomas à Kempis. Oh God, who art the truth, make me one with thee in everlasting love. It wearieth me oftentimes to read and listen to many things. In thee is all that I wish for and desire. Let all the doctors hold their peace. Let all creation keep silence before thee. Speak thou alone to me. So I read that day, just happened to read it. And then I wrote, I put this here because I can't do any better. And it so perfectly captures my state of mind. And I can't believe I just happened to read it today. True to my form, I'm trying so hard to learn. I read the scriptures. I talk to my pastors. I look for ways to go back to school for theological training. I go on retreats. I meet a priest who introduces me to a bookstore where I find Merton and Nouwen, who lead me to Anthony and the Desert Fathers, and Augustine and Aquinas and Camus and Dante and Maritain and Eckhart and John of the Cross and Hopkins and so many others I've never read, who speak of Aristotle and Plato and the classical languages I can't read. And the preachers on the radio speak of Moody and Wesley and Calvin and Luther, while I watch the fish and dove bumper stickers go by on the freeway with Jesus being sung to me 1,000 different ways in songs that begin to all sound alike, making backgrounds for talk shows that try to explain basic doctrine to confused callers, debating fine points of theology and social values. Pre-millennium, post-millennium, pre-trib, rapture, pro-life, choice, gay rights, family values, moral decay, church and state, Catholic and Protestant, conservative and liberal, Mutt and Jeff. And this was 30 years ago. And how much does that apply to what's going on right now as well?
Wow.
Turn it off, shut it up, snuff it out. Noise by any other name sounds the same. I stand in front of the congregation at church Sunday mornings, my microphone between us. We sing loud. We sing loud enough into amplifiers that sing loud into amplifiers that make us louder, almost loud enough to be heard over the drums and piano and guitar, well over the congregation who sings back at us. I sing the words of praise, think of the notes I must hit. I watch the people sing and sway and clap and sometimes dance and sometimes cry. And I wonder if anything is going on here. What are we doing? I asked you last Sunday in the midst of all that noise, in the midst of my noisy week, trying to think through my cluttered brain. Then, down in front, kneeling at the steps, an elderly woman is transfixed in prayer, eyes closed, mouth moving, hands upraised. What is she feeling? Is it real? Is it you, Lord? The pastor comes by and lays his hand on her shoulder for a moment before moving on, and the look on her face makes me smile and frees up a tear to be wiped away. And I know that you put that look on her face, and I thank you for allowing me to help by being part of her experience. I don't get a chance to ask her, but maybe she gets that same look on her knees by her bed with her hair in a net and only a round wind-up clock clicking away as accompaniment. And maybe all this is just unnecessary. And it is, I know it, but you use it anyway and give it the meaning it could never have on its own. But I realize more and more that I won't find you very often in the noise, Lord. And when I do, you won't speak to me as clearly or as longly as you do on these silent pages. Not that you couldn't, but I can't hear as well, listen as well. I'm finding myself, who and how I am, through the measure of your presence in my life. Those activities, those modes and methods that bring me close to you are those that match the nature of my spirit, my silent spirit that doesn't speak, but knows when it's home, or at least getting close. So I will use the apparent magnitude of your presence as my sextant to guide myself through the maze of books and sermons and songs and t-shirts and Christian gift shops that I might stumble across on my way home to you. So that was my experience nearly 30 years ago of this phenomenon that I'm talking to you about. I had filled myself up with so much stuff, thought that this is what I needed to do in order to get close to God. And I got to a breaking point where it just didn't make any sense anymore. And I can't say that I turned it all off at this moment, but it was a moment that I started to get more aware of the fact that there needed to be some balance. Now, at this time in my life, I was living alone in an apartment, and I was trying to live like a monk in the city. So my apartment was completely silent. I had a routine. I was up at 5 and I ran and I meditated and I journaled. I did whatever for 3 hours until 8 o'clock when it was time to start working. I did a lot of work from my apartment at that time because I was doing freelance work. And so I was keeping, silence in everything that I was doing and really trying to work on this. And so I had that going as kind of a counterbalance, but I was still in the midst of all that my head was constantly moving, constantly trying to stuff down more information. And this is where I started to realize I needed balance. And one of the books that I read at that time was the Cloud of Unknowing. And this is going to be small, so I don't know if you'll be able to read it there, William, but see, I'm going to just read a couple of paragraphs from chapter 4. The Cloud of Unknowing is another 14th century classic of contemplative literature. But what he's talking about here is that we think that we're supposed to approach God through our words, through our intellect. And he's saying that that's impossible. So chapter 4, of the simplicity of contemplation, that it may not be acquired through knowledge or imagination. I have described a little of what is involved in the contemplative work, but now I shall discuss it further, insofar as I understand it, so that you may proceed securely and without misconceptions. This work is not time-consuming, even though some people believe it otherwise. Actually, it is the shortest you can imagine, as brief as an atom, which, as the philosophers say, is the smallest division of time. The atom is a moment so short and integral that the mind can scarcely conceive it. Nevertheless, it is vastly important. For of this minute measure of time, it is written, you will be held responsible for all the time given you. This is entirely just because your principal spiritual faculty, the will, needs only this brief fraction of a moment to move toward the object of its desire. If you were now restored by grace to the integrity man possessed before sin, you would be complete master of these impulses. None would ever go astray, but it would fly to the one sole good, the goal of all desire, God himself. For God created us in his image and likeness, making us like himself. And in the incarnation, he emptied himself of his divinity, becoming a man like us. It is God and he alone who can fully satisfy the hunger and longing of our spirit, which is transformed by his redeeming grace, is enabled to embrace him by love, which, transformed by his redeeming grace, is enabled to embrace him by love. He whom neither men nor angels can grasp by knowledge can be embraced by love. For the intellect of both men and angels is too small to comprehend God as he is in himself. Try to understand this point. Rational creatures such as men and angels possess two principal faculties, a knowing power and a loving power. No one can fully comprehend the uncreated God with his knowledge, but each one, in a different way, can grasp him fully through love. Truly, this is the unending miracle of love, that one loving person, through his love, can embrace God, whose being fills and transcends the entire creation. And this marvelous work of love goes on forever, for he whom we love is eternal. Whoever has the grace to appreciate the truth of what I'm saying, let him take my words to heart. For to experience this love is the joy of eternal life, while to lose it is eternal torment. So what he's trying to say is that it's futile for us to keep trying to approach God through the noise, through the download of more data and all of this, but that can create the paradigm for us to then shut it all off, in his words, to hide it beneath a cloud of forgetting, so that we can pierce the cloud of unknowing that God is behind And the cloud of unknowing is created by our intellect, this attempt of ours to try to understand rather than just be present to and to love. And so once again, we've got the futility of trying to think our way to God. And if we don't get the balance between the silence and the noise in our lives, it's going to be impossible for us to really approach God in the kind of way that we are trying to. We'll be working at odds with ourselves, in other words. All right, that was a lot of words I just threw at you again, but hopefully it's getting us to the more of the idea of what Nouwen is trying to say. Any thoughts, comments there? Go ahead, Julie.
Yeah, I wanted to share that I started really a contemplative life and meditation probably in February. And as I had begun, I was also following quite a bit of Thomas Keating's work because of what he adds to the understanding of what contemplative prayer is. And it drew me in because I loved the knowledge, but I also know in my walk with God that he's spirit. And so I've got to quiet my mind down in order to communicate with him really completely. And what I've learned by the discipline was really challenging in the beginning, carving away that time, which was once a day. And now my whole day is looking forward to getting to it again twice a day, which, you know, I don't know how long it'll last or anything of that nature, but it has been the greatest companion that I've had through a huge transition in my life. And that what's quite remarkable is that through that, because I'm focused on it and I'm got that discipline in my life, there'll be things, just realizing that God is being, there'll be things that I will ask him in my spirit or just feel in my spirit. And sure enough, the download comes in that contemplative prayer meditation time, just sitting there. And it's not an aha moment or anything of that nature, but it will come during my daily routine. You know, the next thing you know, that whatever that was pops up, and it's given me an answer or a clue or a feeling of okay, or an ability to step forward. So I'm devoutly hooked. I am absolutely hooked, and it's worth taking the challenge, at least it's been for me, to take the challenge to be able to carve out that time. And I also created a space where I sit. It's really my prayer chair. And it has the words, so I can start with some scripture or something like that, or music. And my morning routine is just like going back to bed. Actually, it feels so good. I get up, I take care of myself, I get the little dog out to potty, I put the coffee on, I sit down, and it's like I'm getting back into bed with a cozy blanket, and just to hang out with the Lord for 20 minutes before I start my day. So when I read what's going on and can relate so much, Dave, to what you had written in the 90s. And now we've got cell phones, and there's nothing that leaves us alone unless we choose to be. So it's been a lifesaver for me.
That's great. And your characterization of the way the downloads come is what you hear over and over again. It's not during the times of prayer that you get the download, because that would be inappropriate. In fact, if you did get a download during prayer, what should you do? You say the sacred word and you step away from it. You let it go. That's not the time to be considering such things. But it's during the day. You know, just as you're going through your day, I remember I always had the sensation things would start to just pop up. I use the analogy, you know, that those mud things in Yosemite where the bubbles pop up it'd be like that. These things would just
Yeah.
bubble up and pop up, and there they were during the day, when you just spend time being quiet in your contemplative prayer sessions. So it's amazing how it works, but everyone seems to have the same experience if you will carve out the time and be regularly dedicated to this process. Stuff happens, and you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to think about it. It's just going to happen. All you have to do is keep showing up without expectation, and just to try to be as quiet as you can, and just let all that stuff go. Just be
so many. Yeah, one of the things that Thomas Keating talks about a lot, which really drove me to submit to committing to the time. He says, during that meditation time, the Holy Spirit is the greatest counselor you could ever have. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going for the great counselor. And just allow it to be. And sure enough, that stuff bubbles up and is given, at least for me, an unusual strength where even the books that we've gone through, The Dark Side of the Psyche and all that stuff, I just like to make nice. I don't want to go in and rock the boat or deal with stuff. I don't want to do any of that. And what you're laughing, I mean, I don't. I just assume let it pass me by. But you know what? When it's time to grow up and you've got to deal with some stuff, you got to just deal with it. And what the meditation has given me is the strength to speak it, where I really could not. I'm not a kid anymore. I've been at this a long time. And it's time to speak up. And there is an end. The beginning doesn't always feel so hot, but coming through the end of it. So I really have been so blessed by it.
Great.
Julie, thank you so much. That was really beautiful and really helpful. I have a question for you, something I struggle with. It's, like I said, quiet around here all day. Well, Brady's working and I'm, doing various things, housework or laundry or, whatever. But I've had also the bubbling up and that kind of, you just know that it's something is downloaded, like you say, and then it comes up. But I still struggle. How do you keep your mind from going 20 different directions? Mine just ping 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 all over the place. I wonder if you struggled with that initially. Just being
during meditation. Yes. Oh yeah, I meditate 20 minutes, sometimes a little less, but rarely. Usually it's 20 minutes. And I can tell you it takes me almost 18 minutes to calm down.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Yeah.
It really does. I mean, there's wonderful days that I might get right into it at 10. And I don't mean to calm down. It's just that when the internal dialogue just stops. And I've learned to not grasp it. I don't allow it to rabbit trail. Mm-hmm. And that's an exercise in itself.
Yeah, yes.
But then there's a crossover. I don't know what you would call it, Dave, but there's a place where all of a sudden there's just a crossover of peace. And it generally, at least for now, because I'm such a newbie, but at least for now, I always know I'm getting close to the end because the Lord and I are just one. And another part that has really brought me into great quietness is really, for my realization right now in my growth of understanding the fullness of God, is that it's being, it's just being. It's like just sitting in that chair, just breathing. not analyzing it, not anything, just being with the Holy Spirit and letting him just do that work. You know, it's almost like an okay. So, but it takes time.
And yeah, just what Julie is describing is, I mean, everybody goes through it. And I don't know that, you know, I suppose as you get better and better at it, you can go right into that space. I'm coming back to centering prayer after being in the Brother Lawrence School for a few years now. And I'm finding it's really difficult for me. My mind is not as disciplined as it used to be. And so my thoughts are ping-ponging. But I kind of, as Julie said, it's not so much how many times you are triggered or pulled off the moment. It's your recovery time coming back that really measures your progress. As you get better and better at coming back, even though you may get triggered and pulled off a lot, don't worry about that. Just focus on the recovery time. Just see it as another opportunity to practice coming back. And the coming back is not about trying to banish the thoughts that are errant, the mind-wandering thoughts. That just makes them stronger. It's about cutting off their oxygen supply by just coming back to the present moment. So if your technique is centering prayer and you're using the sacred word, that's where you would just, you know, lay down the sacred word in your mind. And then that kind of displaces all the other stuff, you know, kind of like dropping that stone in the pond with the film on it. It just opens up a space and you get to be in that space until it closes back up. And then you realize you're mind wandering again, your thoughts have taken over. And then you just drop the next word into the pond. If you're doing a follow the breath technique, that may, at least at the beginning, be preferable because it's constant. You just go back to cool, warm as you're inhaling and exhaling, and that's constant. So it's more like a mantra where there's something constant that you can come back to. But eventually, centering prayer I like better because it gives you the space where there's nothing going on. You know, you're not focused on the breath either, and there's just this space. And at best, it's like you're inside this huge space. It just like opens up and you feel like you're in this immense cavern or something where all the space opens up and you have all this expansiveness in it. It's a really interesting sensation that may occur. But at any rate, we're all going to fight that. But the more you practice it, the better you get. So I would do the same thing during the day in mindfulness. So as you're going through your day and you're trying to be quiet so you don't bug Brady, right? But you go through your day and notice where your thoughts are. You know, are your thoughts someplace completely off? Some of the studies have shown that when we're doing personal grooming, brushing hair and teeth and doing makeup, that's when our thoughts are almost never on what we're doing. I mean, analyze that sometime. When you're brushing your teeth, are you really thinking about brushing your teeth? You're thinking about a million different things. So on a scale, that's when it was like 99% people were not thinking about what they're doing in personal grooming. And there's a video that where they had done the study, and it was really funny. There was even so much of mind wandering going on during sex, and it's just like, really, you're thinking about something else during that? Okay, but at any rate, no, just practice during the day as much as you can. Practice your awareness, be aware of where your thoughts are, and when you realize they're not on what you're doing, I have a little quick 3-step thing that I do as a triage to try to bring myself back. Is the thing I'm thinking about something that I can control? Now, the other thing to think about is, you know, most of us are mind wandering at least half the time. But if we have any kind of stress going on or any kind of issues, that shoots right up to 80 to 90%. And so you figure 90% of the time, especially at times of stress, you're not thinking about what you're doing. And if you analyze the content of that material, it's overwhelmingly negative in the sense that it's stressful. You're thinking about the things that are not done, the things that are wrong, the things that have to be changed, and the things you need to do. So when I realize my thoughts have been pulled off, the first thing I ask, is this something that I can control? If the answer is no, put it on the shelf and come back to the present moment. Actually, come back to the present moment, and that puts it off onto the shelf is the real way to think about it. If the answer is yes, it's something I can control and need to do something about, can I do anything about it now? If the answer is no, same thing. Make a note of it so I can be responsible, put it in a tickler fire and put it someplace so that I can get to it at the appropriate time, and then put it on the shelf and come back to the present moment. If it's something I can control and I need to do something about it now, then I need to excuse myself from whatever I'm doing, go do it, and then come back to the present moment. And so it's a real quick way for me to be able to make sure I'm not missing anything, because that's where a lot of the stress for me comes from. I might miss something, it'll fall through the cracks, I won't get it done, I'll be irresponsible, you know, all those things. So if I just go through that real quick triage, I can put it to bed, and then I can come back to the present moment guilt-free. But if you just spend more time during your day noticing where your thoughts are and bringing them back, if we can spend the majority of our day only thinking about the thing we're actually doing, our day is going to be experienced completely differently. And then in times of meditation, then we're practicing stepping aside from everything, not even one thing that we're doing, it's everything. And the technique we use becomes more and more powerful to use during the day. But I think, Beth, that's the best thing to do, is just keep practicing.
Thank you.
It'll get
really
better and better as you go.
Thank you, Dave. That was really helpful, because my mind is just ready. I'm telling you, it's just like, woo, you know, lights going off all the time, thinking this. So thank you very much.
I feel like I'm inside a popcorn machine and the popcorn's
Yeah.
popping. That's how it feels sometimes. Just
Yeah.
You know. But the more you do it, the more you get disciplined, and the more you can do it, more you can do it quicker and quicker. You know, just clear the mechanism and go into that space. But it takes, like anything else, it just takes practice. So the more you practice, the better you're going to get at it. Yeah.
That's my goal.
Yeah.
I also think of like when your mind drifts and you're bringing it back. Like, I don't think of that as a distraction so much as that is the meditation. Like that's the whole process of just coming back to wherever you are in the moment. And if that happens 100 times while I'm sitting for 10 minutes, then I've done 100 push-ups. I've done 100 mental push-ups of bringing my mind back to the moment. And the moments when my mind is racing, it's like when I'm on an extra hard level, you know what I mean? And it's, you get a lot more opportunities to do push-ups, you know? And for me, there are times when I can sit down and my mind can go blank and I can get into that space relatively easily. But there is, no matter how long I've been doing it, I still have days where my mind is all over the place.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's something I had for breakfast or but, you know, and for me, like, I just try to think of it as this is what the meditation looks like for me today. It's just keep coming back, and trying, like Dave says, trying to bring that into my daily walking life. For me, I can catch myself 100 times a day sitting in a state of tension.
Mm.
And I feel like tension is presence without awareness. You know, it's like I am like flexing my muscle, even like when I sit with a chair that has armrests, because I'm short, I tend to push down on my elbows on the armrests, and I'm kind of hovering off the seat almost because I'm pushed down on my elbows, and I'm not aware that I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And I would have to catch myself over and over again. And I remove the armrest from my chairs so I can, you know.
That's kind of extreme.
Well, basically I found that I was just carrying a lot of tension in my shoulder because I had a chair with armrests. And you know, and actually a doctor mentioned that to me, and once I made the adjustment, I started to feel the difference. And I could catch myself when I'm acting like an armrest is there, even when there is, I don't know how to really describe it, but it's just like the whole meditation, or the way I'm thinking of my meditation right now, is just the coming back in whatever place that whether I'm driving or I'm cleaning or whatever. Like, just keep coming back, and that's the everlasting, ongoing goal.
Mhm.
And then whatever happens after that is, yeah, I don't know.
It's all gravy, right?
Yeah.
That's perfect, William. That's a perfect way to describe it. And I've gone through the same thing now. I'll as soon as I realize it, I'll drop my shoulders. It's like you carry so much tension in your shoulders and you don't realize, like right now, I just dropped my shoulder. I didn't realize I was hunched up like this, and I'm got that tension again, kind of you're talking about the armrest. But I'm going through the day now and just intentionally dropping my shoulders and just trying to get in a more relaxed place. I do think that what will happen is that those triggers they'll start to space out. The more that you practice this, and you're going to find out that you have more and more time in between those mind-wandering episodes where your thoughts are pinging and taking you out. We're all going to have bad days. No matter how evolved you think you are, you're going to have the days where there just is no way you're going to be able to do this. And so you just sit there for your allotted time, whatever you set for yourself, and just keep coming back, like William says. And don't worry about it. Don't stress about it, because if you get angry with yourself, you got something else to come back from. And so you just kind of like do the Ronald Reagan thing. Well, there you go again. Say that to yourself, and then just come back to the present. And you're practicing over and over again. But it will get better. It will get easier. And the goal is kind of like, it's almost like the opposite of an aerobic process, right? What do you do in aerobics? You get your heart rate up into a target range and you hold it there for 20 or 30 minutes, right? And stuff is happening that you have no idea that's happening. You don't feel the effects of it right away. In fact, all you feel is tired and you don't want to do it and you really don't feel like it. But if you can break through that threshold and keep showing up and just get your heart rate up and hold it there for that amount of time, then all sorts of things start to happen that you can become aware of. And kind of like Julie said, you'll get to the point where you're actually looking forward to your workout sessions. Well, in meditation, what we're trying to do is take our brain activity and drop it down into a target range that's called the alpha state and hold it there for 20 or 30 minutes. Now, alpha is the lightest stage of sleep, but even though our brain is going into that range, we're going to stay completely alert and aware through all of this. But we're still getting the benefits of being in that state. It's just like EMDR is trying to get you in that kind of state as well, because that's how it works, with the brain firing, in some kind of unity. And then, you're doing the therapeutic work during that. Same thing is happening to us in meditation, but we got to get the brain down into that range and hold it there for the allotted amount of time. And like I said, when we're really fighting it, we're all kind of all over the place and the brain activity staying high. But like Julie said, if it's in 20 minutes, it's just the last 2 minutes where you really feel that you hit that space, that's 2 minutes that you didn't have before. Right. And it's the only way you're going to get there is by going through the first 18. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. But to practice silence in this way is huge. And it can offset a lot of noise that's happening throughout the rest of the day. So it's practice it as mindfulness, practice it as meditation or centering prayer, but see if you can start introducing it into your life. Just become more aware of what your mind is doing while you're doing what you are doing, and see if you can more and more get them to align during the day, and it'll make a huge difference. Okay, that's great. And we ended at another big black print place, so we can start clean next week. Hopefully Frank will be back and he'll get to do some reading again. But any last second comments, observations?
I just realized that I have a very huge available here by myself. I start sometimes feeling sorry for myself because other people have people. And then I realize I have such a beautiful situation like what you were all talking about tonight.
Yes, you have the whole place to yourself, don't you? You can be as quiet as you want to be. That was kind of like me in the early 90s. I had my place all to myself. I could be as quiet as I wanted to be. Take advantage of it, because circumstances change. And suddenly, William can tell you, suddenly you don't have as much quiet time, do you, William? All right.
Bring the silence with me, so it's all.
Yeah, that's the key. That's the key. Well, both of our closing prayers are gone, so you're stuck with me now. So, Father, thank you so much for this evening, Lord. Thank you for this conversation. Help us to value silence enough that we will actually go for it. We will try to create it, we will embrace it, and we'll absolutely learn to love it as a balance in our lives, and to realize that you are always found most clearly in the silence and not in the noise. We want to find you more and more clearly, Lord. So help us to find the initiative, find the energy, find the willingness to try to introduce more and more silence into our lives. Thank you, Lord, for all the help that you're constantly giving us. And never let us forget we can only do any of this because you did it first. And we pray this in Jesus' name. All right. Thanks, everybody.
And
Good session. Thanks for all the
you.
shares. That was really the key, to hear
Yeah,
everybody's
thanks,
perspective
guys.
on silence. Good stuff. All right.
have a great
Good
week.
night.
All right, you guys. See you on Sunday.
Bye,
One
Kathy.
way or another.
Thank you.
Bye, Beth. Bye, Rainey.
Bye. Bye,
Bye,
Jordana.
Bye, you guys.
We'll see you next week.
Okay.
right.
All right, Sherry.
Good night.
Good night, Sherry. Jordana and Linda. Good night.
Bye, Linda.
Bye-bye,
Bye,
guys.
Dave. See you guys on Sunday.
Sunday. Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.